Okay, so today is the 26th of June, 2022, and we'll pay homage to a very interesting cultural figure that is Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, who was a Persian, better known, well, he has a longer name, but he's known as Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, or in the West simply Tusi, but I kind of like the longer name. Nasir al-Din al-Tusi in Persian was a Persian polymath, architect, philosopher, physician, scientist, and theologian. Let me read again. Persian polymath, architect, philosopher, physician, scientist, and theologian. And personally, I think we need such intellectual figures and cultural figures again in our world. So Nasir al-Din al-Tusi was a well-published author writing on subjects of mathematics, engineering, prose, and mysticism. What about that? Let's read again. He wrote on mathematics, engineering, prose, and mysticism. How many people will do that today? I know of none. Additionally, Al-Tusi made several scientific advancements. In astronomy, Al-Tusi created very accurate tables of planetary motion in the 13th century. He also an updated planetary model and critiques of Ptolemaic astronomy. He also made strides in logic, mathematics, but especially trigonometry, biology, and chemistry. Nasir al-Din al-Tusi left behind a great legacy as well. Some consider Tusi one of the greatest scientists of medieval Islam, since he is often considered the creator of trigonometry or trigonometry as a mathematical discipline in its own right. And trigonometry is very important for architecture. The Muslim scholar Ibn Khaldun considered Tusi to be the greatest of the later Persian scholars. There is also reason to believe that he may have influenced the Copernican heliocentrism. Well, you know, I will stop here, but I truly suggest to you not to ignore this name, this powerful, significant cultural figure in the history of humankind. This Persian, also architect, who built some observatories. And by the way of this, I will show the works of contemporary observatories built in Japan by a contemporary architect. I will also show examples of Persian architecture. But kind of by the way of this, I want to tell you that today I discovered I knew that there is an architecture biennial in Tallinn, in Estonia. And searching for it on the web, I discovered that indeed this year it will be the architecture biennial there with a theme edible architecture. You know, a rather surprising theme, no? But then I also discovered there is an art biennial, not architecture biennial, also in Tallinn, Estonia, with a very different theme, and that is animistic cosmologies. And I asked myself, why such a huge difference between animistic cosmologies, the theme of the art biennial, and edible architectures of the architecture biennial in the same year and the same city and the same country? Why? And this depresses me because it shows me how banal architecture became. Truly banal. I mean, you know, you have the art biennial address a very complex theme, animistic cosmologies, and you have the architecture biennial occupy itself with a rather humorous theme of edible architecture. Are we to begin to eat our own buildings? Because edible, that's what it means, you know, eatable architecture. So I am so revolted that in fact I'm thinking to launch an alternative architecture biennial in Tallinn, an architecture biennial concerned with animistic cosmologies. Because you see this man, Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, he was a serious intellectual, a serious scientist, a serious artist, a serious mystic. He was also a mystic. And I think our age became so banal and so prosaic and so concerned with eating and eating and eating again that, you know, I am tired of this, as if we live in order to eat and not the other way around. I think we live in order to create, to explore our human possibilities, and shouldn't transform a means, which is to eat, into a goal, the goal of life. There shouldn't be this. So again, we eat in order to live, and we do not live in order to eat. Anyway, and now I start by showing the works of this Japanese architect who built kind of a cosmic architecture, as it is called, and he built observatories. I discovered him rather recently, and I hope you'll enjoy the surprise of finding out about Takasaki Masaharu. So again, why do I talk about him? By the way of the Persian polymath we are paying homage today, who also built observatories. I couldn't find images except some recreations, models, or graphic representations. But by the way of him, I want to show that even in the present, there are architects who assume the cosmic dimension of life and try to build accordingly. And Takasaki Masaharu, a contemporary architect, does just this. Here he is contemplating actually a house that he in fact built, and you are going to see it. Takasaki Masaharu, the architecture from cosmos. This person, Claudia Fugetti, wrote on collateral.al. Again, architecture from cosmos. Most of the time, architects forget even the word cosmos. They don't even think about it. So Takasaki Masaharu, born in 1953, is one of the most interesting and original architects working in Tokyo today. And Tokyo is not deprived of important architects. Best known for his creativity in the creation of cosmic architectures. It is curious to know that although the artist, that's how he is described, as an artist, is an architect. Think about this. The artist has been creating very interesting structures for over 20 years. He is not well known outside of Japan. It should be added, however, that recently the Japanese Institute of Architects awarded him as the most important young architects in the country. Well, recently he's not so young any longer. Maybe he's young in spirit. Takasaki's projects combine organic and mythological. Let's repeat. Combine organic, his projects, organic and mythological. What could that be? Mythological? What architects today think about mythology? Well, apparently he does. He describes his architecture as an environmental being that connects humanity with the cosmos. Cosmos. These philosophies are manifested in the use of egg-shaped elements, diffused light to create mystical interiors, columns, and inclined planes. The Kagoshima Observatory in southeast Japan was built in 1995 and was to be an important astral observation site. The small red buildings at the foot of the structure house several laboratories and were originally designed for researchers. Unfortunately, the work in question never got the recognition hoped for, and today is assiduously assaulted by tourists who consider it an extremely original and unique construction. And so it is. So check out Takasaki Masaharu's Instagram profile and the book Takasaki Masaharu, An Architecture of Cosmology. Are we thinking of cosmology today? Very few of us, if at all. But it is immensely important to understand that we are not alone in this universe. There is such a thing as cosmos. And Buckminster Fuller correctly said that the problem with the so-called the environment is that the environmentalists is that the environment is everything outside of us without us, while cosmos is everything outside of us plus us. So I think we should consider again what cosmos means and try to connect with what is above, what is below, what is to the left, what is to the right, what is within ourselves, the great mystery of existence. So Takasaki Masaharu, that's what he said. I look on building architecture as an opportunity to consider human relationships and also natural relationships. I consider architecture the best composite art with which we are able to engage all five senses. In addition, I think that architecture is the king of lives. Well, wishful thinking. Things such as music and sports move people momentarily, but the impression made by architecture is lasting, and it expands our cosmic view and our human consciousness. Are we thinking about expanding our human consciousness through our buildings? Very few of us. By considering architecture the king of life, maybe it's better to say the queen of life, and by experience of the architectural space based on the human consciousness, the transformation of consciousness is brought about, and what I term, meaning him, Takasaki Masaharu, what I term the new earthian human, the new earthian human, although this is a little bit redundant because the word human comes from humus, which means earth. So to say earthian human is actually redundant. The human is earth, is considered the being who has decided to live in tune with the earth, that does not care about societal constructs such as a school or a city. Well, I don't know about that, but anyway, let's move forward. Kihoku Astronomical Museum, here it is. Surprise, surprise. What does the rationalist think? You know, the timid rationalist who only thinks that there are right angles and only the T-square and the rectangle can be used to do architecture. Well, it's not true. So Takasaki Masaharu is confusing us, is provoking us, and I'm glad he does. Unfortunately, he used concrete, and concrete pollutes, but when he built, there wasn't so much concern with pollution or the climate warming. But I still think it's a remarkable building. Well, a little bit neurotical, but maybe appropriately so for our time. I'm sure the great Persian polymath that we are paying homage to would not have built an observatory like this. But we are in the 21st century, are we not? And I still think it's a very impressive building. And yes, the functionalists would protest that there are many things here that are done so-called uselessly, but I think the emotions that the building should provoke are not useless. And so the artistic expression of a building is not something that we should ignore. Anyway, Japan, as we know, is one of the few countries that still experiment copiously in architecture, and perhaps not only in architecture. And bravo to them. You know, they are not timid. They experiment a lot, and I wonder why we don't do it. Anyway, an observatory, and it does look like an observatory. How exactly it functions like an observatory, I do not know, but it does evoke. It's a museum, I understood, but also an observatory. Anyway, I find it very interesting, because it is really about, it communicates a desire to communicate with what we call cosmos. Takasaki Masaharu. He also built a few houses, and we are going to see them. But even those houses do have a so-called cosmic dimension. Again, dear students, don't be timid. Express yourselves, express your emotions. Surprise even yourselves, surprise yourselves. Unfortunately, I know you'll receive grades, and if you make something like this in the School of Architecture, you'll be punished severely, which is very, very sad. This is a building which is unconventional, but then creativity itself should be unconventional. In a way, some kind of a new temple, no? Some kind of a modern temple. We cannot be like, Iktinos and Kallikrates on the Acropolis, the Parthenon. We cannot be like this any longer. We have to find different ways of manifesting our wonder in front of the mystery of existence and life. These are the research spaces for the, for the scientists working there, themselves kind of interesting, are they not? Anyway, it's an architecture that unsettles, those who have expectations from only a certain kind of architecture. But there shouldn't be limits, really. There shouldn't be. I understand why the tourists are flooding that area in Japan to see this building, because it is special, it is special, and it somehow does connect with our time. It shows the complexities of our time, the distortions, the instabilities of our time, maybe also the longing of our time. Now, another one, the Tamana City Observatory Museum, a little bit different from the previous one, but still, yes, it's cultural. It's unsettling again for those who are timid or who have, certain expectations in architecture. There is a certain heroic dimension in these works. Are we thinking about the heroic architecture, but a heroic architecture which is not arrogant? Because this is the problem, not to mimic, not to inflate our chest. That's not true heroism. I think a true hero is modest. Are these buildings modest? Maybe they don't appear to be very modest, but I don't find them really arrogant. No, I don't think they are arrogant. Yes, they are audacious, but I wouldn't call them arrogant. It's almost like a quest through architecture for a new dialogue with the gods. That's what I see. That's what I see here. But the dialogue is difficult to carry today, or to start even, because we kind of killed what we call the sacred. But the way towards what we might call the sacred is this way, not mimicking past forms, but being loyal to the time and the space we are in, that is in the present. I personally identify psychologically with the physical realities of such buildings. I find they belong to our time. Now look at this. This is a house. Can you believe it? I believe it. I believe it and I like it. Why not? Okay, it's not very modest. I agree. It's not for everybody. But it's unique, isn't it? And I thought about this, about exception. Certain parts of the world, including in where we are, exceptions are not encouraged. But then how are we to achieve the exceptional? Because the word exceptional derives from exception. You cannot be exceptional unless you are an exception. So personally, I would strongly encourage the quest for excellence, the quest for what is exceptional. And in order to be exceptional, you have to be an exception. Now, a house from 2009 of the same architect, look at it. You know, yes, it's complicated. Yes, it's even disturbing. But I think psychologically, the physical reality of this house might tell the truth, maybe the truth of our own soul. Yeah. 1990, Takasaki Masaharu. Bravo to him. Art topology, Takasaki Masaharu. Japan rises again. This is the title of an article I found about him. And I like this again. Japan rises again. It's a country quite capable of giving birth to itself over and over again. Bravo to them. The Zero House. What a nice name for this house, which we already saw. It's quite a provocative zero, isn't it? Yeah, bravo to him. Even if when it is affected, because you see, it's not polished with, with finishes. I like it even more because of it. It is robustly honest or sincere. I like this house very much. Is Tadao Ando more interesting? I wouldn't say so. I like Tadao Ando, I respect him, I admire him, but there are other architects in Japan, as you can see. An interview with Takasaki Masaharu you can find on this website if you want to make a screenshot of this screen, if you are interested in the works and in the thoughts of this Japanese architect, Takasaki Masaharu. Again, images of the house. Another house that he built. And here he is in Poland. He was invited in Poland by a school of architecture. I don't know exactly, maybe in Krakow. And another image from another house. Some, some parts of my presentation need some improvement because there is a collage of some images not yet structured properly. But anyway, this is just a presentation that wants to stir up your curiosity, and then you can explore further on your own. And this is beautiful about our time, that you can actually, from the comfort of your home, explore whatever theme interests you. You have access. You don't even need to go to the library. You can find a lot of material on the web, just as I did with what you see here. Takasaki Masaharu, the cosmic dialogue. Here he is lecturing, and I am a little bit envious of him because very, very rarely I had the occasion to have so many students with me in Sala Frescelor in Bucharest. But what can I do? Architecture is beautiful as an intellectual construct, as an adventure, and which engages your imagination, your longings, your intellect, your brain, your heart, everything, and if it is an adventure, then you breathe better. I'm sure of it. Okay, and now we go to the second part of this rather short homage that we pay to the Persian polymath that I read a little bit about at the beginning, by showing some images of Persian architecture, because he was Persian and because Persian architecture is truly beautiful, and we need to know better this architecture. Even Frank Lloyd Wright, who didn't admire a lot of architecture, he expressed a very warm appreciation and love, actually, for the blue domes of Persian architecture. Now, I know that, a certain American president placed Iran on the axis of evil. Iran is a very old country, a very old culture, and the Persian culture that preceded the Iranian one was achieved levels of excellence which are truly remarkable and in no way inferior to the best achievements of European architecture or culture or any other part of the world. No. So look at this. Now, if anyone can tell me that this is not a sublime architecture, I would strongly debate the opposite. I would strongly say the very opposite. This is a sublime architecture. It is in everything, in structure, in ornament, in its geometry, in the sophistication, in its elan vital. It is beautiful. And I don't think there is a person on this earth, maybe including President Bush, who placed Iran on the axis of evil, who would say this is not beautiful. It is beautiful. Now, the timid functionalist who would say there is no such thing as ornament, we only work with white walls, I would say I am very sorry to hear this, because from the very beginning, architecture worked both with structure and ornament. And what else do we see here? Can you remove the ornament? Impossible. It is intertwined organically with the structure. And this beautiful conjunction of structure and ornament, we need again. We need again, otherwise we get tired and bored of our white walls, and the only obsession we have is with space. But architecture is not just space. I didn't read, this word I couldn't find in the 4 books on architecture of Andrea Palladio. Most architects of ancient times, of old times, they didn't talk about space. Yes, space is important, but it's not the only thing. Plus, time is important as well. Vito Acconci, an artist turned architect who died a few years ago, maybe appropriately said that architecture is not about space, it's about time. But looking back at our looking more carefully again at the picture that I just started with, this is a superlative architecture. And why? Because it is about beauty. It's not about where the refrigerator is, where about the toilet is, where about the parking lot is. No, it has nothing to do with it. It has to do with beauty and with faith, because this building was built for the above, was an expression of faith. We reduce truly architecture to such a prosaic low level that is truly depressing. You know, I mean, you can take the best architecture of the present and not easily it can compare itself with what we look at here, not easily. I mean, look at this. Look at this, trying to imagine these anonymous workers, you know, craftsmen, artists, architects, anonymously doing this sublime work because it is sublime. Think about the knowledge, the complexities, the hard work, but also the joy of accomplishing such beauty. Just compare what they did with what we do, if you can. And I love the present. I loved contemporary art and architecture. But I see here something that I miss badly. I really miss. Think that just a small fragment here, human hands worked, you know, diligently and again, anonymously, not thinking of money, but thinking of serving God, their God, but their God was our God as well, as it should be. We shouldn't have different gods. You know, there is one, or there is a commonness, even in spirit. Everything here is, I mean, just think these surfaces sometimes are curved. Just think of the coordination, you know, between all these individual efforts to make something like this possible. I am not shy of saying again, this is sublime architecture. Even without ornaments, this is sublime as well. And it is very old, you know, I mean, we are talking about centuries ago, 8, 9, 7, 10, I don't know, almost 1,000 years ago. Is it a good architecture? Of course it is a good architecture. It is a good architecture, and it transcends the specifics of a certain religion or particular culture or whatever. It is good architecture. It is moving anyone who has some sensitivity left within. Uh, you know, I'm almost speechless, you know. I'm almost speechless because we are so full of ourselves in the present that we build beautiful things. What beautiful things? Do we build something like this today? Not easily. Not easily. I mean, the complexities of what's going on here, you know, we don't even dream of, you know, with all our great technologies and so on. What is missing is faith. We don't have faith. These people work manually, and look at what they accomplished. Just think of this part here, to coordinate all these things and to put them together with ceramic tiles, with beautiful bluish or blue ceramic tiles. Of course, Frank Lloyd Wright loved this architecture, loved the blue ceramic tiles, because these are small fragments brought together by the will and the inspiration, the grace, the joy of countless craftsmen and anonymous architects. Look at this. I am infuriated about my time, which ignores ornament. How could you ignore ornament? How could you ignore ornament? It was present in architecture from the very beginning of the history of architecture. And here it arrives at sublime levels, because you cannot remove it from the reality of the building. Call it space, call it structure, call it whatever you want. You cannot remove the beauty of the ornament. The beauty of the ornament is a celebration of creation, of the joy of living and the joy of expressing emotions. Like Louis Kahn said, referring to Carlos Scarpa, his friend, he said that the detail, the ornament is an adoration of nature. Well, that's what we see here, an adoration of nature, an adoration of cosmos. But are we thinking of adoring anything? To adore means to love. What I see here is the expression of love. That's what I see. This is an expression of love. Now, maybe the very word love has nothing to do with us today, because we are, you know, so-called emancipated moderns, and we are cynical enough to not even think about love. But I think we should. We should. And there is love here. I'm sorry. Look at this. I want to know what architect today, with all the parametric tools that we have, with all the money that we have, with all the whatever we have, we cannot easily create something like this. We can't. How did these Persians do it? How did they do it? Just try to imagine the immense knowledge they had. You know, these were sublime geometers. They knew a lot about geometry. I mean, this is on a curved surface. All these things decrease. I mean, it's truly a magical art. And those who think that architecture is not an art should look at this image. What else is here? Of course, there is science too. Of course, there is also technology, the technology they had at that time. But above all is art, is feeling, is emotion, is adoring. Should I remain silent? God, the gods, light, sacrality, creation, existence, you name it. Look at this, an architecture of the cosmos. But as opposed to the Japanese architect that I just showed, these people work together. He works alone in a modern world. But these people were united by the cosmos of hope of a shared symbolic order, which was the religion that united them. We don't have that any longer. So here is not just an individual expression, exasperated or not. Of course, here we cannot talk about exasperation. This is a collective effort done by people who didn't care about the, retirement pension, or about the little signature being recognized, or things like this. They were concerned about leaving something behind as an expression of the deep love for life and for God. And that's what I see here. Look at this. I am mute, I am speechless. I really, if anyone who loves architecture doesn't acknowledge that this is sublime, then I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. There is multiplicity in unity. There is structure, obviously, but it's not a rigid, deadly, oppressive structure. It is softened by ornament. And this is the role of the ornament, to bring sensitivity to a structure which otherwise might be too blunt and too rigid. In this case, structure and ornament beautifully are in conjunction, beautifully. I like here as well. And I have countless images, I can find countless images with this architecture, which in some parts of the world is almost completely forgotten or neglected. How could it be neglected? It's like neglecting beauty. It's like neglecting what Dostoevsky said, that beauty will save the world. Beauty, yes, beauty. Just think of this corner here, how it was done in a, physically. How was it done? It's magical. These parts, are curved, and the shape is not simplistic at all. Who coordinated all these so-called details to come together in such a sublime way? Look here again at this. This is a magical art. I mean, really, what these Persians did put us to shame. I'm sorry. I am sorry. Just what I see in this image puts to shame most of our contemporary architecture. Look at this. And we don't know who built them. There are no signatures, they are anonymous adorers of life, of creation, of beauty. That's what they were. And that's what we should be too. I better shut up, actually, because truly what I look at now together with you is intimidatingly sublime, intimidatingly beautiful, like this as well. What I see here is the peacock's tail, the one that John Ruskin praised for being useless but immensely beautiful. Well, that's exactly what it is, like the wings of the butterfly, as also, beautifully useless or uselessly beautiful. It is not uselessly beautiful. Beauty is a necessity, and perhaps the highest. And look at this, even without the ceramic tiles, the weaving of the bricks, of the mud parts, the clay parts of it's beautiful. They are all coordinated magically through mathematical knowledge, through geometry, and again with the ultimate goal of paying homage to the source of life, to God, to the creation, to the mystery of existence, to everything that truly matters. Look at this. I actually find this very modern. Yes, because for me, the word modern means something that is pressingly or intensely connected with my own aspirations, my own longings. I cannot call this a dead art, because I find it actually very actual, very vital. It has a beautiful élan vital. Look at this again. It's both rational and irrational. It's both structural and well, I could say psychodynamic or psychedelic even. Why? Because structure and ornament are united. That's why. We saw this one, and I better not look again because it's just too much beauty, really. It's too much beauty. It is too much beauty. It's not my religion, it's not my culture, it's not my time, but I find it intimidatingly complex and beautiful. And I envy these constructors, these builders, these craftsmen, these architects. They work for beauty. This is a book which I highly recommend to you, and which I have, in fact, The Sense of Unity, the Sufi tradition in Persian architecture. It is a beautiful book where you see how differently they thought about architecture. My God, my God. These people were poets, were philosophers, were mathematicians, were mystics. What are we in comparison? Very prosaic and poor beings, because we are only concerned with banalities. You know, how to place the refrigerator in the kitchen, how to resolve correctly the bathroom, as if this is the ultimate goal of life, how to create a so-called correct parking lot, ignoring that there are already too many cars in Bucharest. And just a few days ago, there was an interview with the advisor in urban matters for the city hall in Paris, who said, we cannot continue in this way. Bucharest has to renounce so many personal cars. It has to think about its oxygen, about pollution, about many, many things that we don't think of. We only think of parking lots, refrigerators, toilets, and so on. It's depressing. Look at this. I am speechless. I am speechless. We cannot do something like this. We can't. We can't with all our means, you know, we can't. Because this is an image of the cosmos. But it's an image also of the macrocosmos and the microcosmos. It's also an image of the tail of the peacock that John Ruskin was so in love with. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, but this kind of beauty doesn't interest us any longer. And this is immensely sad. It's actually tragic. They knew something about space as well, didn't they, these Persians? I mean, what else is here? They also knew something about structure. What else is here? But they didn't neglect the ornament again. You look above. And why is the ornament particularly emphatic towards the upper part of the structures or the space? Because it's coming closer to the sky, to the heavens, to God. That's why. It's a celebration of that approaching the above. How did they trace this circle, you know, in constructive terms so perfectly? How did they do it? They didn't have computers. And the complexities that we find here in the interior for us are unimaginable. Unimaginable. No, we can't think of such matters, and we can't do them. Yes, we can go to Mars, we can go to the moon, We can go far away from the earth, running away from the earth after we destroyed it, instead of attempting to create beauty of a similar quality here and now. You know, it saddens me that Elon Musk is thinking of going to Mars when he could invest his, you know, creativity, financial means, and so on, entrepreneurial skills to create significant beauty here on Earth. Why should we go 6 or 8 months through the darkness of cosmos to arrive a place which doesn't even have a sufficient force of gravity, which is essential, not to speak about oxygen and so on. There are things I do not comprehend. It's true in my world. I cannot comprehend. The earth is a blessed space, a place, no? It's blessed with sunlight, with luscious nature, beautiful trees in the spring or otherwise, the grass, the flowers, the butterflies, the you know, the lilies, the peacock, and so on. Why are we willing to leave the earth? Why? Because we destroyed it? And we keep destroying it? The blue domes of Persian architecture, exactly those that inspired beautiful words from Frank Lloyd Wright, who was not so inspired by the Renaissance, European Renaissance, although there were magical, artistic and architectural moments in the European Renaissance as well. But he had the highest praise for Persian architecture. Again, this is the book which I recommend to you strongly, The Sufi Tradition in Persian Architecture, the sense of unity. But the unity described in this book is not an oppressive unity within which the individual loses herself or himself. No, it's a multiplicity in unity. So you have both the individuals and the collective together, just like in the beautiful stalactites and stalagmites of architecture, Persian architecture that we looked at. This is a more recent example, of course, you know, where the embroidery is coming back to architecture, you know, where structure and ornament collaborate again. These are some newer examples that I thought of perhaps showing again. That's because indeed ornament is returning to architecture, and this must be understood even where we are now today. And it's not yet understood, and I don't know why. These are modern projects. They don't have, because the creators of such modern projects do not have what the old Persians had, that, you know, shared symbolic order that religion, faith gave them. The modern individual artist or architect doesn't have that support, which is crucial. So he or she tries to do whatever he or she can. You see, the embroidery is less centralized, less sure of itself, more unstable, but still the quest is for the same thing, to honor forces which are outside of the individual human life, call them cosmic or some other way. But coming back to the old art of the Persian architecture, we see something different. You know, yet over the centuries, there is some kind of dialogue. Persian architecture, Persian architecture. Now it's true, these people didn't have TVs. They didn't have useless HBO shows, you know, full of crimes and rapings and scandalous scenes. You know, they had time, so to speak, to create for the glory of God. Soli Deo Gloria, as Johann Sebastian Bach was signing his musical notations. And as Ingmar Bergman, the great contemporary, well, almost contemporary filmmaker, also did. And I would ask you, the students in architecture and young architects, when are you going to sign your plans for your buildings, the drawings for your buildings with the same three initials, S, D, G, Soli Deo Gloria, for the glory of God alone? Can you do it? Did you think about doing it? I know of no architect who thought of it. But as I said, Johann Sebastian Bach was doing it in his compositions. He was signing with these three letters for the glory of God alone. And so did probably the most important filmmaker or film director until now, that is the Swedish Ingmar Bergman, whom I admire the most. So, you know, again, actually between levels of excellence 8 centuries ago and now, the distance between them sometimes is not so great. There is some greatness, you know, in closer to us as well. And I hope, you know, contemplating the achievements of such, you know, extremely accomplished periods in the history of architecture and culture in general would make us again ambitious in that noble sense to achieve our highest potential by giving ourselves to something higher than ourselves. Because in a way, that's what true creation is. This is Persepolis, Persian architecture, going back to 5000 BC. That's a long time. Anyway, I expected this presentation to be a little shorter. I probably had another version of it. I have to trim it a little bit. But you see here in this city, you see the blue domes of Persian architecture triumphantly and beautifully celebrating what is to be celebrated. Why are we studying history? Because history is teaching us about a certain continuity, cultural and spiritual, that perhaps we shouldn't ignore. This is prior to the, you know, prior to the blue mosques and the blue domes that Frank Lloyd Wright admired. But there was greatness then. We have greatness too. It's true. Not everything is discouragingly meaningless. This we see, it's an architecture that seems to want to connect with the past, but is done in the present, probably in Iran. Yeah, this presentation needs a little bit of trimming. It's not very organized towards the end, and I regret. Anyway, Persia, and we do this again because of the homage I wanted to you know, express towards that great Persian polymath whose name I still have the need to learn. So thank you for being here.